What's up, my guys? What's up, my girls? AKA my dear and beloved Dani Flowis. It's good to be with you one time for the 22 times. I'm your boy Dani Flow, your favorite podcast, vodcast teacher. I teach you things. So, I stole that pronunciation from my lovely wife. Instead of things, we say things. Shout out to you, my lovely wife. I love you, baby. But anyways, I basically teach you by giving you, my guys and my girls, my philosophy, my philosophy of fitness, my philosophy of family, and my philosophy of faith, which is that we should all be Catholic. And yes, I'm hella weird, but you like it. So in this episode, I'm gonna keep talking about whether an older girl should date a younger guy. Why am I gonna keep talking about this? I think it's an interesting question. I think it's a good question to ask, and I think there's a lot to consider. And maybe you think that I'm dragging this on, but I think that this is how critical thinking is done. We can't predict the future. We're not psychics, we're not prophets, we're human beings, but we're rational. I hit the mic, sorry. We're rational, we have a big brain, and so we want to try to reduce the number of unintended consequences that there are by thinking this through. And maybe some people might think that we're overthinking. And if I'm being honest, my guys and my girls, because we like honesty here on the Dani Flow podcast, vodcast. We're a fan of honesty here on the Dani Flow podcast, vodcast, as well as critical thinking. I'm having a hard time remembering what I even said in the first part of this, which was this is episode 28, so this was episode 25. I do remember that episode 26 was about following all of the laws concerning what a legal adult is and following all ethical practices at your place of employment. If the older girl and the younger guy work together, or if they're at the same university and the older girl happens to be a teacher, things like that. In the last episode, episode 27, we talked about respecting the younger guy's parents, because if they have a good relationship, then they want the best for their son, and they instinctively want to protect their son, and so they just want to make sure that the older woman has good intentions. By the way, you're welcome to go back and watch those episodes. And before we get into the thick of it, I guess, my guys and my girls, go ahead and click on the bell so that the YouTube's notifies you when I upload a brand new video, and you can tune in and get all my thoughts that I have for you, my guys and my girls, and I really appreciate it. So in this episode, what we're gonna focus on, like we talked about the younger guy's parents, right? So, but we need to consider what if the older girl has kids, right? Because I think I have mentioned this in all of the episodes, but one of the main things, I'm not sure if I want to make such a manly assertion. I'm going to try to make a moderate assertion. I think one of the things that needs to happen is the older girl and the younger guy need to have the same philosophy of dating, right? In philosophy, there's this thing called teleology, and teleology is the study of ends or purposes, right? So it tries to define, it tries to explain what a thing is for, what is the end purpose, what is the goal. So you should have the same philosophy of dating, as in what is the end of dating, what is the purpose of dating. Are we dating just to date, right? Are we dating to eventually move in with each other, right? Which I disagree with. Are we dating just to sleep with each other? Which I disagree with. This is my channel and these are my thoughts, and I have reasons for that. And just because you disagree doesn't mean you need to stop watching me. I'm sure you have your reasons and you would want me to listen to them if you felt inclined to present them to me. Or are we dating to get married? And I think if an older girl, not all the times, but I think generally speaking, because listen, I think we would be naive to ignore that. I mean, just at a purely biological level, we have the biological desire to reproduce, right? And according to, biological science, a woman isn't fertile all of her life. A woman eventually becomes infertile, right? It's just part of her biological nature. And so a woman that's getting close to that time, if she hasn't found someone to reproduce with, to put it crassly, if she hasn't found someone to have children with, then she might all of a sudden be in a rush. And so if she's dating a guy, whether she's dating a guy older than her age, or younger than her, right, she's probably not going to want to mess around, date just to date just to eventually move in together and see where it leads to, date just to sleep around, right? Even if she has done those things and agrees that those things are okay, maybe now things have changed, right? And I think we would also be naive if we don't kind of at least consider the possibility that marriage is the most stable relationship to have children, because a child is permanent, right? If a child is conceived, is born, and dies a natural death, that we're all temporal, but a child is permanent in that sense. And so a woman is looking for a relationship that's also permanent to bring that child into, right? And so we need to consider those two things, right? So if, back to what this episode is about. This episode is about, what if the older woman has, a child, right? Then you definitely need to have the same philosophy of dating with the younger guy, because not only is if the guy is 18 and you're 28 and when you're 28, you could have a 4-year-old, you could have an 8-year-old, you could have a 10-year-old, right? And so not only is and if you're looking to provide your existing child with a stable relationship, and not only that, but you want to have more children because maybe you want to be done having kids by the time you're 31, 35, 38, 40, what have you, right? Then this guy that you're interested in, who happens to be younger, not only is he going to get married rather quickly, and if he's okay with that, that's great, but now on top of that, he's going to become a father rather quickly, because if you're 28 and he's 18, technically you could date for 6 months, get married, wait a couple years, you have another child. If you're childless, boom, he's a father at like age 20, right? But then if you already have a child, whether he or she is 2, 4, 6, 8, whatever, then he's very quickly not only going to get married fast at a young age, but become a father fast. And you need to make sure he's okay with that. And unfortunately, like I talked about following the laws and the ethics 2 years ago, you kind of have to test it with time, because you don't want whether a guy is older than you, the same age as you, or younger at you, you don't want a guy that you start dating, right? You have the same philosophy of dating. It's supposed to lead to marriage. It does lead to marriage. You guys vow, promise to each other before society, before God, if you're religious like me, that you're going to be together until death do you part. And then it gets hard, and he's young. All of a sudden he's like, oh, I have my whole life ahead of me, I don't need to be doing this, and runs, right? And not just young guys do that. A guy that's going to be your age might do that as well. A guy that's going to be older than you might. do that as well for different reasons. A young guy might be like, I've got my whole life ahead of me. I don't need these problems, right? These not seeing eye to eye with my wife, whatever. A guy your age might be like, I just made a mistake. A guy older might be set in his ways and just like, you know what? I kind of liked how things were before this. Different reasons. Those are maybe just shallow reasons, but I'm kind of thinking on the spot it could be more, deeper reasons than that. So, or like, let's say the marriage is going great. Let's say the dating goes great, the marriage goes great. There's no sign of this guy, booking it, as they say. I guess older people say that. I'm an old millennial. What are you gonna do, right? So, it's just bringing a child into the marriage is a whole nother different thing. When you marry someone, you have to learn to think about yourself a little bit less and less. Now, at a child, you also have to think about yourself less and less, which is actually beautiful. Like, don't believe the hype. I'm gonna say, I think maybe something controversial, maybe something divisive, maybe something insensitive, but there's the popular philosophy of like self-care and self-love, and honestly, I'm not sure that I would have to look into it more, because I would want to know the strongest form, right? The strongest philosophy of self-care and self-love. But the little bit that I know, I'm not sure that I agree with it. And here's why. Because most of our lives, we just care about ourselves. We just, like right now, my young baby boy, like he loves himself. All he cares about is himself. And I'm not even sure that I'm teaching him how to do that. And if you think of kids, if you think of teenagers, if you think of young adults, it seems to me that all they care about and love is primarily themselves. And then as you get older, it almost seems that you kind of move away from that naturally, and maybe that's why they are trying to emphasize it, but actually moving away from it causes a lot of joy. I'm married, so I actually think that wife care is self-care, and I'm a father, so I think son care is self-care. Like, I'm the most joyful, I think, when I know that my wife is being taken care of by me, and when my son is being that's not to say that it's not hard, right? And I guess maybe I haven't thought about it much longer than that. So hopefully I didn't, I don't say that to offend anybody, but that's what I mean. I think I think if you're an older girl and you're interested in a younger guy, well, even if you're not interested in a younger guy, if you're interested in a guy your age or older than you should be interested in someone who is willing to kind of put you and the child you may have, or the future children that you may have, before himself. And I actually think that that's what's going to make him happy as much as he can be happy in this life as a man, to be honest. Now, I think I don't want to make this episode too long, but there could be the possibility, right? Because we want to consider things, and we don't want to be, there's things that happen in life that we don't agree with, but we can't act like those things don't happen, and a lot of times the things that we don't agree with, right? We're trying to be honest, and we're trying to think critically. If we're being honest, a lot of times the things that we don't agree with, they're not part of our world. They're not part of our bubble, right? They're outside of our world. They're outside of the bubble. They're outside of the things that we they're just outside of out of our everyday life, out of our everyday experience, right? But that doesn't mean that these things don't happen outside of our bubble, outside of our world, outside of our life, right? It happens in other people's lives. It happens in other people's bubbles and other people's experience, right? So there's what do you call it? There's times where older girls have kids, and for some reason they're still single. Maybe they had a kid with someone, and it was on accident, in the sense that they didn't intend for the sexual activity to end in conception, and then it did, and they did it. The girl and the guy involved just didn't end up together, romantically. Or the older girl is divorced, or the older girl, I guess that's kind of most of the options. Either they unintendedly had a sexual encounter that led to a child, or they were dating for a long time someone they had a child with, they broke up, now they're single, or they were married and got divorced. I think that pretty much covers it. But let's say a woman is 38. If she got pregnant when she was 20, her son could be 18. And then what if you're interested in an 18-year-old? Like, that complicates things, right? And I think, just like in the last episode, I said we have to take in consideration the younger guy's parents. I think if you're an older girl that has an 18-year-old and you're dating a guy that's 18, or maybe you have a 20-year-old and you're interested in a guy that's 20, you have the same philosophy of marriage. You're taking into consideration the parents, you're following all the laws and the ethics, but what about your son? Like, is he okay with that? And I think he's like, one of the things that your son might think is like, I don't want a guy the same age trying to be my dad, right? And so you have, like, I personally don't know how you would deal with that, but you have to think about it. I'm not saying what? I'm not saying that that you shouldn't do it. It's just, to be very careful how you proceed, right? Because a 20-year-old guy is an adult. Someone who is 40, a girl that's 20, a 40-year-old is an adult. But then if you have a son that's a 20-year-old, he's also an adult. It's like, this has to be handled like adults. Maybe the wise thing would be to break up in some cases. The wise thing would be to not break up in some cases, and then keep testing the relationship with time, and hopefully it ends up with marriage. And I guess it just depends, but there has to be open. I think it would be weird for like, if I was 20 and my mom was 40 and my mom was trying to date a 20-year-old, it would be weird for me, right? And I think that's the first step, is to, because here's the thing, just like a younger guy's parents would be skeptical of an older girl dating their son, because they want to make sure that the relationship is not based on anything shallow, right? That the intentions are good, that they're pure, that they have the right orientation, that their son is not going to end up hurt. A 20-year-old son whose mother is 40, who's dating a 20-year-old guy, he also has that worry, for lack of better terminology. Like, who is this guy? Does he have good intentions with my mom? Is this just based on shallow reasons? Is he really interested in my mother as a person, both body and personality, not just, body? Is he just here for the short term, right, while he dates her and gets whatever he wants out of the relationship? Maybe just, so, to be honest, because again, we don't want to be naive. We don't want to we want to think critically. We don't want to act like things don't happen. But there are people out there, not just guys, not just girls, but there are people that do things for the sake of saying that they did things. There are people that just collect experiences. So in the case of an older girl dating a younger guy, one of the things that the younger guy's parents might think of is this an older woman just trying to collect experiences? She just wants to know what it would be like, right? She just wants to have the knowledge of what it's like to date a younger guy, a guy half her age, a guy, a few years younger than her, a decade younger, whatever. So a 20-year-old son whose mom is dating a 20-year-old guy, he might have that same concern. Is this a guy that just wants to collect experiences? He just wants to know what it's like to date an older woman, but he's not necessarily planning on staying with her after an allotted time, after he can pass that threshold to where he can just say, oh, this is what it's like to date an older woman. I'm done, right? I came for this, I got this, and now I'm out. Do you get what I'm saying? And the same would apply if the older girl has a daughter, right? That's what they would think. Like, is this guy really interested in my mom? So everything that I just said about a son's concern, a daughter would have that concern as well. And it just depends on whether the wise thing to do. We want to do the wise thing, right? Sometimes you're gonna have to break up. It doesn't mean that you're not going to. It's easy for me to say, but it doesn't mean you're not gonna find someone. It just means it didn't work out with that person. But sometimes here's the thing. Sometimes the wise thing is to stay together, right? If the younger guy, if all of the things have been considered so far, and then some other things that we're going to consider as well. But the daughter should have the same concern. Now, if you're an older woman and you have a daughter that's the same age as the guy that you're interested in, you should think about that, right? You should explain, like, listen, like, I have a younger daughter that's closer to your age, right? And like, if you're interested in me, you're interested in me, right? If you start being interested in my daughter, then you need to tell me, because then obviously you're not as interested in me as you are in girls your age. Obviously it's more important to date someone your age than you are actually interested in me. You want, so let's end with this. An older girl and a younger guy, right, who happen to have this huge age gap, you should stay together, like, in spite of that age gap, right? Not because of that age gap, like, because it's just thrilling to, for the younger guy to be with an older girl and vice versa, or maybe just because it would still, I guess, fall under the umbrella of thrilling. Like, you don't want to be with someone just to like spite, because a future episode, I mentioned this in the last episode and I'm mentioning this again, but one of the things that we're going to talk about is like social stigmas. But like you don't want to be with someone that's older than you or younger with you just as an act of rebellion, right? Like, it has to be, you have to have the same end. Like, I'm a younger guy that's looking to get married, have kids, start a family, right? I met someone that wants to do that. She happens to be older than me. The same with the older girl. I'm an older girl. I think it's, whether you have kids or not, if you have kids, I'm ready to get married. I want to have more kids before, I really don't want to be offensive, before menopause, right? Menopause is a thing. It's a thing, right? Don't get mad at me. I want to have more kids before menopause. I'm ready to start a family. I found someone that wants to do that. It happens to be a younger guy. I didn't intend for that to happen. It happened, right? Now we proceed with caution. We think about what laws do we need to follow. We think about what ethical principles that we need to follow, that if we didn't follow them, they're not necessarily illegal, but it's a good idea to follow them to test the relationship, whether we should proceed with this relationship. What do the younger guys' parents think? Another way that you can test a relationship. If I have kids, if I have younger kids, are they ready not only to date to find out whether they want to marry me, but are they ready to be a father figure to my young children? If I have a child the same age as them, what does that child think? If my child happens to be the age of this person and happens to be a daughter, right, there has to be a line of like, look, if you start developing feelings for my daughter, who looks like me but is younger, you need to be a man and say, hey, I don't think this is going to work out because I'm kind of attracted to your daughter. And then that young guy cannot date your daughter. That's weird, in my opinion, right? That's weird that I was almost dating your mother, and then that's how I met you, and now I'm going to date you. The way that you would proceed there is, I think, the same way you would test it out with time. If after a year, 2 years, you can't, like, the younger guy is still thinking about that girl that he met through her mom when he was kind of dating her mom, then there might be something there. But the best thing to do is step back. So I hope I didn't make anyone uncomfortable. I hope I didn't offend anyone. That's not the intention. The intention is to share my thoughts with you so that you can kind of, I guess, take my word for my thinking process, and hopefully as I'm thinking, you can kind of see. I mean, I consider myself a critical thinker because I'm a philosophy major. I could be wrong about that, right? But I definitely do think that this is an interesting question. I'm having a fun time. I hope that's not creepy, thinking about all of the things that, because let me put it this way. So, please God, may I have a daughter. But if I don't, I don't. I just burped again. I'm really sorry. It's a human thing. So if I don't have a daughter, I don't have a daughter, right? But so I've got a baby sister. I love my baby sister. Shout out to you, Jade. If my baby sister, right now she's 18. She's gonna be 19. I think she's my favorite, but right now I'm having a hard time remembering her birthday, and I'm probably not gonna be her favorite after this. Such is life. Let's say when my baby sister is 28, and she's interested in a younger guy. Well, I would want her to think about it for a long time, and these are the kind of things that I would tell her to think about. Now, if I do have a daughter, it'd be the same. Now, whether my baby sister is 38, interested in a younger guy, 48, interested in a younger guy, 28, 38, 48, whatever, or my future daughter, 28, 38, 48, is interested in a younger, I would say, all right, like, listen, we have to think about all of these things, and we have to test this relationship with these things. Because when you test it with these things, right, with following the law, following ethical principles, taking into consideration the parents, taking into consideration any children that the older girl has, taking into consideration what the social stigmas might be, not giving into them, right? But just thinking about, am I willing to deal with the negative ones, right? For example, it's like if the relationship kind of passes those tests, right? Then there's something real there, right? And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for something real. I'm gonna end it there because I truly don't intend to make these episodes long, and then because I'm kind of thinking on the spot, that's what happens. Cool. Thanks for watching, my guys and my girls. Thanks for putting up with me. I would love it if you would share your thoughts with your boy in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Share your thoughts with me, but then also if you subscribe, tell me why you subscribed, right? So I can keep doing more of whatever made you subscribe. If you're not watching on YouTube, if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, thanks so much for listening. Go ahead and subscribe on there. And if you want to do something cool for your boy, share the link to the podcast with your bestie, your nextie bestie, and your fan bam, so you can help me grow my listenership. If you feel like doing something hella cool for your boy, leave a review, so that'll also help me grow my listenership. And if this podcast has added value to your life, then quite possibly it might add value to your bestie's life, to your nextie bestie's life, to your fan bam. The link to leave me an audio message is below. Go ahead and do that as well. I'd love to hear what some of your voices sound like. You can also support my podcast, vodcast, financially. The link to that, not lat. Lat is a muscle. The link to that is below. If my podcast, vodcast, has added if it's a cool thing in your life, if it's added value to your life, go ahead and consider supporting me financially. If not, that's cool too. The best thing that you could do for me is share the link to my YouTube channel or the link to my podcast, whether you listen on Apple or Spotify. That way you can help me grow my audience, my channel, my listenership. And thanks in advance for if you do any of those things, and thank you if you've done any of those things. I really appreciate it, and I really enjoy sharing my thoughts with you, my guys and my girls. So, as always, my guys and my girls, aka my dear and beloved Dani Flowist, let me know what you think. We're a fan of thinking here on Dani Flow Podcast. We love thinking here on the Dani Flow Podcast. And remember what Venerable Archbishop Fulton J. Sheen taught us: your life is worth living. Love you, my guys and my girls. Bye.